Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Man on Second podcast. As always, my name is Eric Wiedeke, and I am joined by Joe Frisaro. Joe, what did you do this weekend? How was it?
Well, I mean, we celebrated Mother's Day,
Absolutely.
so that was good for my wife and my daughter who are mothers, and I still have my mother, uh, and so yeah, we did that. Other than that, watched a lot of baseball, and
Absolutely.
probably saw about four games, including the 11:30 Red Sox White Sox game. Teeing me up for the Marlins. I was watching Zach Gallen, look great again for Arizona, doing some advanced scouting. The Marlins will fortunately miss Zach Gallen. Maybe Jazz would like him, but he threw what seven shutout
Yep.
yesterday, and then we saw our favorite team. Oh, I also saw George Kirby. We're going to talk a little about him, the really good pitching prospect of Seattle, who got called up and kind of dealt against our beloved Tampa Bay Rays with six shutouts, 7 Ks, and we'll tie in that a little later in the show as we kind of delve more into Max Meyer when his day is, and then watch the Marlins, and then Trevor really good, and then smooth sailing until our old friend Jorge Alfaro greeted our new friend Cole Sulser with a 3-run homer in the ninth, and that kind of has triggered the fan base, as you would imagine, in Miami to overreact as always on a blown save, and we're going to dive into that with what we feel are the real numbers and the real stats, because anyone can on Twitter can pull up a non-contextual statistic and think that defines what a bullpen is or what a ninth inning is. But we're going to dive deep into that, Eric. And what do you got, my friend?
Yeah. So I mean, as far as all of that goes, I guess we can just dive right on into it. Um, because yeah, the bullpen seems to be the real hot button topic for the Marlins. And listen, I'm not going to give them a complete pass. I think that I'm going to be consistent. They've got a bunch of really good seventh, eighth inning guys. I think they lack a closer. Um, I understand that's more of a luxury in today's game. Uh, but I do think that it hurts a team like the Marlins, particularly a team like the Marlins that doesn't score a lot of runs. So, for example, you have Trevor Rogers go 5 innings, pretty strong innings, a really good performance from him, something positive to build on. Um, but they only score two. And so they've got themselves in a 2-0 ball game. And you're literally asking, you know, they threw out, who did they throw out yesterday? They threw out Okert, they threw out Bass, they threw out uh,
Oh, what
Head, I
so
believe,
yeah, Lewis Head was out
Lewis
there.
Head, and Cole Sulser. I believe those were the four that they rolled with. You're
Uh-huh.
asking five different pitchers on a given day to allow less than 2 runs to the San Diego Padres lineup.
Yeah,
That's a lot. That's a heavy burden on any staff. And
Bender
it's
as well. I don't know if you
Bender
mentioned
as
Bender.
well.
Yeah.
Yes, Bender as well. So six pitchers to allow less than 2 runs to the San Diego Padres lineup.
Hmm.
And it exemplifies two things for me. Number one, Rogers, while he was good, he only went five, kind of labored a little bit
Hmm.
throughout his start at times. You'd like to see guys go six at least.
Hmm.
Number two, the Marlins don't score like I think the Marlins not scoring a lot of runs is the bigger story here because they're constantly in these positions. And Joe, you and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording. You have some statistics that are about high leverage stats.
Yeah.
Um, and I believe you noted that the Marlins have an 810 earned run average in high leverage situations. That said, I know that's going to sound off alarm bells as soon as we say that. But I think you also have some pretty good insight as to what the comparison point around the league would be.
Yeah, and this is off of the Fangraphs site. I
Yep.
looked at whatever they define high leverage. It's usually what seventh, eighth, ninth inning guys in scoring position and all sorts of things go into that equation. And yes, the Marlins and people can tweet out 8.10 ERA and high leverage. Oh my gosh, that's the worst thing ever. And it ranks 15th out of 30 teams. It's literally the middle of the pack. Uh,
Right.
Now, the team with the best, the New York Yankees, who probably the best bullpen also, 4.28, good for them. The New York Mets, best team in the NL East, a 7.16. That's not, if you just look at ERA and you see 7.16, that's terrible, right? The Atlanta Braves, defending World Series champs, with a great bullpen. They have an 11.2, 11.72 ERA. So they're 24th. The Atlanta Braves, 11.72. And they have Kenley Jansen,
Yeah,
who isn't up there. Tampa Bay Rays, who rely on bullpen combinations probably more than anybody because their numbers are very skewed. They are ninth at 7.22. The Philadelphia Phillies, they are 10.50. And I believe that's I lost where I wrote down something wrong. And San Francisco Giants, who won 107 games last year, 7.66. They are 13th.
right.
So the Marlins are not very far off. They're high leverage situations from the San Francisco Giants. Now, okay, now let's look at ninth inning ERA, which some people think is a very popular, great stat. It's 6.95 for the Marlins. Obviously, not where you want it to be.
Right.
But I believe we said what they're in 22 innings. Now they play 28 games, but keep in mind you don't always throw the ninth inning. And the ninth inning, because if you're losing on the road after
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
you're not pitching in the ninth, so you know that's not good. Obviously, the Rays, who I believe have blown more saves than the Marlins, including blowing a save yesterday, have a 5.04 ERA in the ninth inning. The Rays, who are very good, 5.04 in the ninth inning. The Padres, who are what? They are what, 19-10, I believe?
Yep.
A 6.23 ninth inning ERA. And the Braves, now 2.86, very good, obviously. The Mets, 2.16 in the ninth, very good, obviously. I wrote these down. But if you look innings 7 through 9, the Miami Marlins are 3.23 ERA. The Tampa Bay Rays, 3.22 ERA, right. 7 through 9th inning. The Padres, 7 through 9th inning, 4.39. Over a run higher than the Marlins, 7 through 9. And I could keep going on numbers. The Braves, they have 2.96, but in the 8th inning, the Braves are 3.60. And the 7th inning, 2.40. So the Braves, if you're going to get to them, you got to get to the Braves early. The Mets, on the other hand, great in the ninth, but the 8th, a 4.80 ERA, the 7th, 3.30 ERA, and the 6th, if you even want to push it there, a 5.10 ERA. Yeah. So, a lot of things go into all of this, as we want to kind of define. Now, I absolutely would agree with you that the Marlins don't have a closer, and they put themselves in this spot. I also didn't think there was a free agent worth overspending to close, and we've noted they made a trade with Baltimore and got Sulcer and Tanner Scott, two pretty good guys there. They clearly missed Dylan Floro, and who will factor into that. Now, does that mean they should have signed Kenley Jansen for $16 million or somebody else for $10 million? It would have been a complete terrible signing, in my opinion, because their need, where's their biggest need, and you hit on the nail on the head, is they don't score enough runs. Their bullpen has been plenty good, but the Mets, third in baseball, 136 runs. The Rays, whose bullpen the Marlins stack up pretty close to, 7th in baseball, 130 runs. The Padres, 8th, as we just noted, struggling in the late innings, yet they have 9 games over 500, 8th in runs. The Atlanta Braves are 13th, and what are they? 14 and 16. I think the Marlins are the same record, if not real close.
13 and 15.
13, so they're virtually the same. They are 13th in baseball, and the Marlins are 18th in runs scored, much better at 111, much better than a year ago when they were 28th or 29th in runs scored. And I've maintained this. If they want to be a playoff team, they got to pitch in the top 10 and hit at least middle of the pack to make them that fringe to get at least a 15th, 14th in runs scored to be at least in striking distance of being a playoff team. So everything they're doing is trending exactly that way. Now, does that make them ruining Mother's Day for everyone who watch any easier? No. Does that excuse hanging a slider? No. But we were talking last week that Cole Sulcer was deserving of the ball in the 9th inning on certain situations. And, I think they have internal candidates that can do it that you didn't need to. Like, to me, why am I spending 16 million on Kenley Jansen? I'm yelling at him for not spending 100 million for Nick Castellanos because
Right.
that's much more impact. And anyone that's arguing to overspend on the closer where the Marlins are right now, I think they're just completely dealing with an emotional look at a couple of games and not see a big picture, not see, where the true need is, and that is scoring more runs.
Yeah. So as far as the point that you made, I guess it's like, and this is a common theme for the Marlins: one-run games. The Marlins put themselves in a position where they play very close games very often because they just don't score enough runs. If we were going into the ninth inning, if we're going into the ninth inning and the Marlins are up 5-1, 6-1, no one's going to care about that 8.10 ERA. You know,
Correct.
in high leverage situations. But you go into those innings up 1-0, 2-0, all of a sudden that 8.10 ERA hurts you a lot more than it otherwise would.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on top of that, it's just you know like you said, I think the batting is the big issue. If they're able to score in those late game situations, and and again, this is a team that struggles particularly with their clutch hitting, uh, and it just shows pitching and timely hitting, pitching and timely hitting. That's what we said going into the season, and for the most part, they've gotten the pitching. Uh, the timely hitting just hasn't been there for this team.
No, that's been a constant, and you know they've relied more heavily on matchups than ever before.
Right.
And I'll make this point as well. Um, Mark Melanson is in Arizona. Big name, recognizable. He blew the save on Saturday in a 1-0 game against Colorado. And Melanson at this stage of his career, his fastball, he throws a cutter. It's like 91 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He has, I think he's averaging 5 Ks per nine. He just gives up too many base runners.
Yeah.
And we talked about the BABIP situation. I want my closer. If you're going to get a closer, do you trade for Craig Kimbrell? Well, the Dodgers did that. They're also the Dodgers. You're pitching knowing that you got the best team behind you in terms of depth and all the resources and whatnot. Um, I've said it all along. I think we have Craig Kimbrell is in AAA right now, and they're making him a starter. You're going to have to probably transition one of these good young arms and make him a high leverage reliever, whether it starts from day one at closer or not. But the premium is on developing starting pitching, so it flips right back to score more runs. I think the Rays, everyone says, oh, well, the Marlins are going to do it like the Rays. We're going to do matchups. Glenn Geffner on radio saying, Jazz should hit ninth because the analytics say hit them ninth, and that's what the Rays do, and we all praise what the Rays do. Well, it's like the Rays, go look at their bullpen numbers if you don't believe me. 3.22 innings 7 through 9, 5.04 in the ninth inning ERA. Marlins 3.23 in 7 through 9, 6.95 in the ninth. And, high leverage, the Rays 7.22 ERA compared to an 8.10 ERA. And why is that? Because the Rays you don't just cherry pick, we're going to bullpen today and win a game, or, we're going to mix and match our closer. Because
Right.
Andrew Kittredge blew the save yesterday for Tampa Bay, and I'd throw him right out there either as my opener or closer, and I don't think anything of it. And
Right.
whether it's Kittredge or when Nick Anderson comes back or whoever, they know and they put the ball in the hands of the guys they trust, and that's it. And right now, who do you trust? I trust Cole Sulser. I don't care if
Yeah.
he gave it up. I trust him. For the most part, Bender, you got to trust him. His stuff is better than anyone they have. It's just a matter, is this going to be the day his confidence or his execution is going to be more on point? So that's where they are. And I do trust
I
Dylan Floro.
I've noticed something inside the when looking at the splits, particularly in the ninth inning. If you actually look at the Marlins from innings 6, 7, and 8, their strikeout to walk ratio, in the ninth, they're from innings like 6, 7, and 8, it's somewhere like 1.3, 1.4. But all of a sudden in the ninth, it skyrockets to 25 to 5. So they've
Yeah.
got a five strikeouts for every one walk in the ninth inning. Um, which, you know, I, I think it's a combination a little bit of the relievers almost pressing to not beat themselves, and you see that in the batting average against hitters
Mhm.
batting 319 against them in the ninth inning. They're trying to throw strikes, and because they're trying to throw strikes, batters are aggressive, and you put the bat on the ball in the strike zone. Chances are, you've got a better chance to get on base. As simple as that sounds. Um, so
Yeah.
it's a combination of a lot of things for the Marlins. Really, the one thing that I can say out of that is that it's a good thing that they're not beating themselves with the walks in the ninth inning. But you know, I really don't know what the answer is for them in those scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, you could go simply, you look at Bender's home run he gave up against Pavin Smith. You throw a slider in on his hands where he could get, you throw it to a left-hander, you throw it into his wheelhouse, into an area where he can beat you. With yesterday, with Sulcer, Alfaro doesn't hit breaking pitches very well, but you just hang a slider in the middle of the plate.
Yeah,
So you just it's it may not necessarily be the pitch selection. It comes down to that execution
right.
and what do you're trying to bury it and you don't. And that happens. It's one guy on Twitter unacceptable whatever. Well, these guys are pros. Yes, they're pros. But when an NFL kicker misses an extra point, that's unacceptable. It's like it happens. A quarterback throws a pick to a DB who's right there and his receiver is somewhere else. This
Yeah,
stuff happens. So you're not going to just cut your team, every time something unacceptable happens. So it's, I get it. My thoughts. Do you think in the offseason they should have done more for bullpen, or I think they kind of waited too long. They didn't make bullpen the priority. So if they weren't going to get a free agent that was worth getting early, and they were going to allocate their resources on the bats. Could they have done something? So let's explore that. Could they have done something a little differently in free agent?
yeah, and you know what? I think I'm getting to the point where I'm willing to say that the Marlins took a bunch of half measures this offseason. And that's and it's not just the bullpen. Like, don't get me wrong, I think this bullpen would be completely fine if you would have gone out and really bolstered the offense like you set out to. But I can only go and don't get me wrong, I understand Soler and Garcia are not going to hit 180 over the course of a 162 game season. It's just super unlikely. But the results are what they are through 28 games.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the offense isn't much better than it was. Well, 18th versus 28th is definitely a
Yes, in runs.
big jump. It is. It is. Um, but I think overall, you just didn't do enough. You shouldn't have to rely because the idea was you didn't want to have to rely on your bullpen as much as you've had to so far. You knew that
Yep.
you had a bunch of guys that you trusted, but you didn't have we nobody expected this to be a shutdown bullpen. So
Correct. And I
you
don't
didn't
even
want
think
to have
they
to
expected
stress
it.
them too much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are excellent points. I think we get down to, you look at, and you mentioned a good point about who they targeted. And why was I steadfast on Castellanos? Because I identified him of their logical what they needed. They need a center fielder. They needed the most impactful batter they can find, and to me, he was it. He fit. He
Right.
checked the boxes. Okay, you don't go get him. You didn't want to go to the salary level, and then you weren't sure where he can play. You win in this game. You win at more than you lose with high impact players.
Right.
Manny Machado carried the Padres with 2 homers in a 2-1 or whatever game in the first game of the series. Why? Because he's one of the top talents. He's a $300 million player. He's one of the
Right.
top talents in baseball. And they're without Tatis, and they have some other. Hosmer is reemerging. Once was a very good player. Now he's reemerging. I think you're. This is my point. If I'm going to target somebody, I'd rather go get that player than say, you know what, I'm happy with the guy who's eighth on our board.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'd rather do that, and get real impact. That's why, Jack McKeon once told me, he goes, everyone's complaining about Scott Boras and dealing with Scott Boras and the salary demands of Scott Boras' players, or Scott Boras has on his players. And Jack goes to me, he goes, I'm not going to drop the middle word, he said. He goes, because normally the Boras guys can blank play.
Yeah.
So it was, and when you think about it in that terms, forget how much are you spending for the player. You're getting the player.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're getting the real impactful player, which gets to your point. If you were to look at it from an evaluation standpoint, the Marlins have a lot of role players.
Right.
And if Jazz emerges to more than a role player, in which we think he can and will, but he hasn't fully done that, okay, why are you winning? I remember when the Marlins had Hanley Ramirez and Ugla in those like 08, 09 years, and you looked at that team, and they're close to 500 or just a little over 500, and they had like 3 players in their lineup who were in the top 5 at their positions in production. Hanley was like 1 or 2. When they had Miguel Cabrera, obviously he was up there like in those 6 or 7. It's like, yes, when you have 2, 3, 4 guys like that, you're going to start winning some more games.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they're like, Garcia had 29 homers or 28 homers and drove in 70, and he's a good bat. Aguilar, he's driven in 100 before. He's a good bat. Cooper, when he's healthy, he's shown signs, a pretty good bat. And then Soler was the World Series MVP at 48 homers 3 years ago. So it's like, but who's your impactful guy? Who's your cornerstone guy? Where's your Bryce Harper? Where's your I get it. Not everyone's Bryce Harper, but get me closer to that than just load up on interchangeable, nice fitting pieces. Because I tell you, in Tampa, Franco's that guy and Arozarena's that guy.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole thing. Is it's interesting to me that you mention all those things, because you're literally asking guys that are veteran guys to replicate literally 1 year out of their 7, 8, 9 year careers. You want them to play at their absolute peak level, and even then, you're like, if they do what they did 3 years ago when they were at their absolute best, we have a real shot to be a decent offense. That's not how this game works. It's very rare that you're going to get a guy's best season, especially when he's not a superstar, because, guys that aren't superstars for the most part, regular everyday starters have a lot of variance from year to year, and the guys that are consistent are the guys that get paid. So it's just the quandary that this team continually finds itself in.
Yeah, and that's great points, and you explained it very well. I'm going to go. Back in another lifetime, I used to cover the NFL back when at the Tampa Tribune, and just for our football fans, if you look at, I remember the year the Buccaneers got Alvin Harper, and he had just a year or so before scored like the game-winning touchdown against the 49ers that kind of knocked them off the porch as the champs, and the Cowboys won the Super Bowl, and a year or so later, the Buccaneers get Alvin Harper. And I was talking to a good friend of mine at the time. He was a NFL columnist in Dallas, and I asked him, what should you think about Harper? He goes, he's the number 2 guy. Everyone's worried about Michael Irvin. He got the benefits. It might be double teaming Michael Irvin, which allows Alvin Harper to catch the slant and score the 50-yard game-winning touchdown. He goes, he's always been the number two. Whether you're in basketball, are you the main guy? Are you Wade? Are you Jimmy Butler? It's like, or are you the other guy? It's you got to get you can look at Chipper Jones for all those years. Well, as the McCanns and those other guys, Frank Kors came up, they always had Chipper Jones. The Marlins had Stanton. They had those players, obviously.
Right.
But obviously they're not here now. That's identifying. Not to your point, you're not just getting numbers. Oh, like you said, Soler, when no one expected it, hit 48 in a year where the balls were all flying out of the ballpark anyway. And yes, it's in him. It's great to have a player like that, but who's the guy?
Right. Right. And I do want to shift gears here a little bit, because the Marlins, while they don't have a lot of those guys in terms of position players, they do have a few of those guys on the staff, and the Mariners actually called up one of those guys on their staff, Kirby. George Kirby went 6 innings, 7 strikeouts. Really solid performance for him against the Rays. Obviously, as you mentioned, the Rays ended up blowing the save in that ball game. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I bring up George Kirby because our listeners need to know about him because he has future ace potential. And, here's a top guy in the minor leagues where he making a jump for Seattle to the big leagues. And like you say, you don't go in and you face the Rays and throw 7 Ks, no walks, and 4 hits in 6 innings.
Yeah.
At double, he made the jump from Double-A here to the big leagues. 32 strikeouts and 24 2/3 innings at Double-A Arkansas, and which raises with the Marlins. They're we're going for it, but we're looking at the big picture, and we got Max Meyer in Triple-A. And we seem to, yes, is he going to come up this weekend to honor the 97 team? I don't know. Maybe not. It's like these other teams are making these moves now.
Right.
And when are the Marlins, going to get Meyer here? And what, like I said, Kirby's the latest. And I think he was on pipeline like 30 or 31. He and Meyer fairly close on that pipeline top 100 list. And, it just, when are the Marlins going to pull the trigger? Because like I've said many times, Max could probably answer a lot of our bullpen questions. But, is he getting the rotation? And then the rotation really hasn't been the need other than Ellie Iser, having some hiccups in 4th, 5th innings, which is kind of always been his MO.
Right. I think more than anything, I guess the big thing with bringing up a guy like Max, and it's the same thing that, the Marlins, they started off 12-8. They've gone 1-7 since then. I'm not calling up Max just because I think I need the bullpen to be better. But when you call up these guys, these heralded guys, all of a sudden the energy in the clubhouse is a little bit different. You can catch kind of lightning in a bottle like that. It's just something to jolt the team a little bit. And for a team that wants to win, we often say you can't win a division in April or May, but you can certainly lose it if you start falling behind far enough. And this is just one of those situations where, it's not a bat. And I would certainly prefer it be a bat, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's any that are really close enough at the moment. But just something to kind of inject a little bit of life in this team right now.
No, that's a good point. And like you noted, just looking at the standings, and we're recording this Monday morning, Marlins and the Braves are 6 games tied for second, 6 games behind the Mets. And to your point of how much space do you want the Mets to have? Because now if you're out of the division, you're chasing the wild card the rest of the year. I would argue potentially Lewin could be the only one, but that just kind of makes your lineup look differently because someone's going to have to give with Aguilar, Cooper, that formula of one plays first, the other DHs, and then they switch on and off for the most part. So do you want that lefty dynamic, a little better defensive dynamic? in your lineup. I don't think he gives the jolt of when the Marlins called up Miguel Cabrera at 20 in 2003, or when Yelich came up in July of his rookie
Right.
year. Um, that type of player, but he would add a different look and dimension to this offense. And they also, with Anderson, not playing in the series
Right.
with the undisclosed,
Yeah.
IL, that didn't help. But they haven't really lost anybody in injuries this year, so you're going to have to be able to scratch out enough to make it interesting. We didn't get to Alfaro. As just the only point I wanted to make about Jorge Alfaro, because we're going to get running a little long. Um, he, I just like the fact that a guy like him, would you rather have him as your backup quarterback? Listen to me, backup catcher, and you could still got Stallings and float him in the outfield a little bit. 40, I think he has like a 49% hard hit rate, but a 44.2 K rate in 52 plate appearances. So we know that there's a lot of swing and miss, but the 49% hard hit rate, the 113.4 miles an hour off the max exit velo, which we saw, I think it was yesterday's homer with that
Yeah.
hit. That's what he provides. A 103 weighted runs created plus, so he's better than average there. He is impactful in a role player position.
Yeah, and to be fair, with acquiring Stallings, Alfaro would be kind of the perfect yin to Stallings' yang, because Stallings is, so far I do, God, I am just going to be trashing the offseason acquisitions, but so far through 28 games as of May 9th, 2022, I want to preface this as much as possible. Jacob Stallings has been like Jeff Mathis so far. And I'd rather, if you're gonna have a catcher that's just a defensive ace, I'm cool with a backup who's all bat no glove, every once in a while. And that
Yeah, and you could
Alfaro
throw
would
him
be
in the
that guy.
corner outfield. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And you could put him at first a little bit,
DH.
and you could DH him against a certain matchup.
Yeah.
But he falls into Alfaro is a fascinating player to me as a role player.
Right.
Because that is huge impact. 113, that 49% hard hit rate. Yes, the K rate's up there, but he can hit a fastball.
Yep.
And if you make a mistake to him, if you match him up right, he could play a role. And the Padres saw that, and that's just paying off for them because they're kind of using him the way I thought the Marlins were intended. Now, keep in mind, it would have cost them more money
Right.
because you would have had to make you had to tender them and make how much you want to pay that player.
Right.
But I could argue that's a more valuable role than what they've used in Dela Cruz, because he could help you behind the plate, and
Yeah.
he comes in there, and if Dela Cruz is getting spots type of starts, and he doesn't hurt you on the bases. He runs pretty well, and so there's again a fascinating player. A good moment for him, obviously a stick it to his old team moment,
Right.
crushing moment for the Marlins and the Marlin fans, and but we break this stuff down here. At Manosecond, we're gonna be as fair and analytical and back up what we say. And I think we do that really well. And I think we kind of explained it pretty well today. Don't want this to run too long, but great job, Eric. Amazing insights you provided. Tell everybody how they can find us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find our full length podcast at the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. And you can also find live replays on Twitter at Man on Second. That's going to be at Man on 2ND. We will have more content coming throughout the week. One of these days, we're going to get ourselves up for a post game on one of these homestand ball games later in the weekend, hopefully after the 97 weekend. That should be a fun time for all. So we thank you guys, and we will see you then.